Hey, hey, hey there, woman. Hey, hey, hey there, girl. The time has come, there's work to be done. Come on, you women of the world. Hey, hey, hey there, sister. Hey, hey, hey there, friend. Come and walk by my side. Sing out with pride. Come on, you women of the world. They say that change is a coming. They say that change is good. You've got to change whatever you can in the place where you stand. Hey, hey, hey there, woman. Hey, hey, hey there, girl. The time has come, there's work to be done. Come on, you women of the world. Hey, hey, hey there, sister. Hey, hey, hey there, friend. Come and walk by my side. Sing out with pride. Come on, you women of the world. They say the road is so long. They say it's always been. No matter how deep the roots may be, you've still got to shake that tree. Hey, hey, hey there, woman. Hey, hey, hey there, girl. The time has come, there's work to be done. Come on, you women of the world. Hey, hey, hey there, sister. Hey, hey, hey there, friend. Come and walk by my side. Sing out with pride. Come on, you women of the world. Come on, you women of the world. Come on, you women of the world.
Well, thank you, Jeanette Arsenault, for that stirring Women of the World song. Indeed, we are. And our thanks also to all your business and professional women buddies from around the world. Welcome, everybody. Bienvenue. We are thrilled. The Famous Five Foundation is thrilled that all of you have taken time out of your busy schedule to join us on this, a Famous Five Friday, a day when women have more power and see more opportunities. And we hope you will stay with us for the hour. It's going to be fascinating. And then join us for the question and answer, the apres-tea after the program. And if you check your inbox by the end of this program, you will receive a new email with a link to the apres-tea. So our thanks to all of you for participating and helping to build Canada. And one of the key builders of Canada are the Black women of Canada. And this, of course, is Black History Month. I'm so obviously focused on the women, and there's some magnificent female Black women who are leaders, and we will be featuring a number of them throughout the year. Canada has an abundance of female leaders, and today we're going to meet three who are outstanding in the field of environmental concerns, and 3 generations, which is even better. So respect for our environment also includes a land acknowledgement. And we are very grateful for the Indigenous sisters and their brothers who for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, for tens of thousands of years, have cared for our land and still have knowledge and information about how to do so. So Indigenous sisters, thank you very much for doing so. This is our land acknowledgement. I'm sure all of you are saying silently to yourself, oh, I'm in treaty, whatever, or I'm in unceded land. I'm in Métis territory of. saying a land acknowledgement is an important step towards reconciliation. It's a step that takes us a little closer to discussing how we can honor our history and the ancestral people of our land, and also build a way forward. As many of you know, Enbridge has been our wonderful major sponsor for 20 years, and we're very, very grateful to Enbridge for the sponsorship. And our thanks also to the other sponsors who have helped us with these virtual pink teas. And I'm very proud to announce a new sponsor, and that is Uniglobe's CBO, their travel company in Ottawa. And our thanks to Selma for being a sponsor. We like to have sponsors from a variety of different industries, so welcome if you would like to be a sponsor. Normally, because of Enbridge being our sponsor, they introduce our panelists for the day, our VIP guests. But they have graciously relinquished this time so that the Ottawa chapter mentee can gain some new skills and practice. And so she has been prepared by the wonderful women in the Famous Five Foundation Ottawa chapter. And so I would now like to introduce Miranda Pearson. Miranda has completed her Bachelor of Arts degree in political science from the University of Alberta. She moved to Ottawa to participate in the parliamentary internship program. And I would encourage others of you listening today to figure out how the young women in your life can also be part of the parliamentary internship program. And Miranda enjoyed it so much, she stayed on the Hill, and she's currently working for an MP. When she has free time, she loves being in the kitchen, and she says she loves experimenting in the kitchen or to explore rural Ontario with her partner. So Miranda Pearson, thank you very much for preparing to introduce and now to introduce our wonderful panelists. Please know we're cheering you on. I will be back a little later in the program, but now now Madison, it's over to you. Madison Pearson, Famous Five Foundation, Ottawa chapter mentee with our introductions. Thank you.
Thank you, Frances. Speaking of the mentorship program, I'd like to thank Uniglobe CBO Travel for their sponsorship of the Ottawa chapter mentorship program. CBO's president and CEO, Salma Siddiqui, has supported our chapter activities and events for many years. It's my pleasure to introduce today's panelists, Ersilia Serafini, Julia Langer, and Miranda Baksh. This pink tea celebrates these three women as leaders in their field and as leaders in their communities. They've set ideas into motion in the sphere of climate action. Each of these women uses a grassroots approach to help their communities combat climate change every day. They engage with the public, the private, and the nonprofit sectors to promote practical solutions. They each harness the growing climate awareness of their communities to benefit all Canadians and the planet as a whole. I'll take a moment to introduce each of today's panelists individually. Ersilia Serafini has been the president and CEO of the Summerhill Group for over a decade. This group is devoted to finding ways of increasing energy efficiency for their clients. In 2013, Ersilia was named one of W100 Canada's top female entrepreneurs. She has a long history of contributing to her community, including acting as the president for the Clean Economy Fund and participating in the Toronto chapter of the Young Presidents Organization. Ersilia is a mother of two girls, a lover of great food, and an eco-consumer in her personal life as well as professionally. We have much to learn from Ersilia's expertise and passion. Thank you, Ersilia, for joining us today. Our next panelist, Julia Langer, has held senior leadership positions in the environmental sector for nearly 30 years. She has been the CEO of the Atmospheric Fund for over a decade. This fund invests in low carbon solutions in Toronto and the surrounding area. Julia received the Minister's Award for Environmental Excellence in 2016. She also helped develop federal energy policy as a member of the Generation Energy Council. In her free time, Julia is an avid cyclist and hiker. Julia's distinguished career is an inspiration for women looking to make a difference in their communities. Thank you, Julia, for joining us today. Our final panelist, Miranda Baksh, is co-founder and executive director of the Community Climate Council. This not-for-profit organization advocates for local climate action in the Peel region, just outside of Toronto. Miranda holds both undergraduate and master's degrees in environmental studies from York University. She credits her education for her strong belief that she can be a solution to the climate crisis. As a digital engagement coordinator with Environmental Defense, she inspires and informs others on local environmental issues. In 2021, Miranda received the Top 30 Changemakers Under 30 award from York University for her vision and drive to make a difference. In her free time, Miranda can be found hiking and exploring Canada's wilderness. Miranda is an outstanding example that we can all be a part of the solution. Thank you, Miranda, for joining us today. The saying goes that when all is said and done, more is said than done. These women are proof positive that in the climate action sphere, this is not the case. I know we're all excited to hear from the panel, so without further ado, I present Ersilia, Julia, and Miranda. Over to you, Ersilia.
Wow, what an absolutely incredible introduction. Thank you so much, Madison. That was so lovely. I'm thrilled to be hosting this conversation today. Miranda, Julia, and I represent 3 generations of women who have built a career championing action on climate issues. It's easy to get caught up in the day-to-day work and the drive to have impact, and there's always more work to do. But probably the question I am most often asked is, how did you get here? How did I end up owning and leading an energy efficiency implementation company? Did I study environment in school? What experience did I need? How do you become a CEO? And before I share some of my journey, I want to hear from our VIP guests today. So I'll start our conversation by asking you, Julia, what was the path that led you to lead an organization dedicated to helping reduce climate emissions? How did you find your way to championing environmental issues?
Well, thanks for the invitation, Famous Five Foundation. And yeah, this is going to be a great conversation because I'll probably learn a lot more just being here. So I didn't set out to specifically lead a climate change focused organization at all, although at a very early age, I was kind of instilled with an environmental sensibility. My parents are very progressive in many, many ways. I remember when we were kids, there was the big Don River cleanups because it was just less sewer. And, we were the ones out there dragging the shopping carts out of the river and, just doing really hands-on stuff. And of course, I wanted to be a marine biologist and save the oceans and be Jacques Cousteau II. And so I studied sciences. I was really into science and biology and environmental science. And I got super frustrated with scientists in that, we absolutely need them. I mean, look at the state we're in. We have to believe the scientists. But the frustration was that you have all of this sort of objective science and no results or action stemming from that. So, I spent a whole bunch of time in a lab spritzing plants with low pH solutions and watching them die. But nobody talked about stopping acid rain. And so you kind of need to use science in order to affect change. And that's when I just I said, okay, well, I am a scientist at heart, but I'm a policy wonk by avocation. And so that was kind of the path that really set me, into the nonprofit world and into sort of the policy reform, change, practical solutions. And so I've kind of hopped from from nonprofit to nonprofit over my career. I had one stint in a minister's office, which really showed me a lot about how government works. And so, yeah, that's been, that's a very, very quick summary of the journey. But I think you have to, it's sort of understanding not only what you do want to do, but what you don't want to do. It doesn't mean that you don't understand all those other aspects of, how our world works and all the stakeholders and types of intelligence and information and skills that need to go into solutions, but pick your lane and then ride that one. Doesn't mean you can't switch lanes, but mine was pretty clear in terms of that advocacy and really advancing environmental solutions of one type or another. I mean, I've worked on marine conservation, pesticide reduction, persistent organic pollutants, the Arctic conservation, but it's the approach in some ways more than the issue.
Yeah, no, I think a lot of what you said, Julia, I'm sure there will be some common themes throughout the three of us. So Miranda, I'm wondering, as you listened to Julia describe her path, how much of that rings true for you? And maybe what are some differences in terms of your journey to get to here?
Yeah, thank you. There were so many commonalities there, Julia. It was really nice to hear that. But I'll start off with, as a child, I just always loved being outside. And I just always loved going outdoors, fishing, hiking, and just being outside, gardening with my family. And there was just always this sense of wanting to be outdoors and this larger appreciation for the greater web that we're all a part of. And I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up for the longest time, even during high school, but I just knew what I loved, as Julia mentioned. And it is a little cliche, but truly following your passion really leads to so many opportunities. And when you're doing what you love, it really branches out into so many other areas that you may not have recognized were even there before. So as an example, I wanted to, like you, Julia, I thought I wanted to go into sciences. I thought that's how you became a biologist. And just for context, both of my parents are from Guyana, so in South America. And I always heard about this lush, beautiful place that had so much biodiversity. And I thought I would one day travel to the Amazon, discover a plant, and it would cure the world. And I thought that's what I wanted to do. And so I started to go into sciences in high school, and I realized I loved it so much. It didn't quite love me back though. And so in first year university, I decided to go the environmental studies route instead of environmental science. And I found that I was able to really apply my passion in a lot more of an intersectional way. So I was really disappointed hearing that, again, science is so incredibly important, but I was discouraged hearing that I would have had to have taken a lot of courses at first that weren't related to my passion, maybe for the first 4 years until I specialized. And I thought, I want to specialize right now. I just know I want to get in there and start something. So that's why I went the studies route. And yeah, I was able to just do a lot more there that was directly related to human health. And then I pursued my master's in it, loved it so much. And I continued to do my work in Belize and Costa Rica, looking at eco health. So that takes a look at biodiversity health and how that interlinks with human health. And I kept looking for these places abroad that needed, support, and where I could use my privilege as a Canadian settler to go out there and do that. And I realized that I could do so much more right here under my nose, right here where I live in Brampton. And so I guess we'll touch up on that a bit later, but I think just knowing where you are and using what you have where you are is an incredible strength as well. But yeah, and when I was in my master's program, I was finishing up my research and I received an email from Youth Challenge International, and it's a program looking for climate action catalysts. And I thought, excellent, this is what I wanted to do. I finished my research. I'm ready to catalyze action. That's exactly what I want to do. So I signed up to volunteer, and they paired me with other women, young women in Peel, and they told us to come up with a solution for our community. And we didn't know what we wanted to do. And maybe I'll hold the whole story of the CCC's creation for later. But one thing led to the next. And ultimately, I didn't know that I would be where I am today.
Oh, that's brilliant. I think that drive to action is certainly a common theme. And I'll share a little bit of my experience also. So I was certainly driven by the issues, and I did pursue science in University of Toronto. I was an earth science and biology major. But when I graduated, I was super committed to this idea of working to engage all sectors in the solution: business, government, people. We all needed to work together to affect environmental change. And so my very first job in the space was as a car heaven angel. And I went out to Esso gas stations across Ontario, and I was speaking to motorists at the pump to increase their awareness of simple actions they could take to reduce vehicle emissions, like properly inflating their tires or disposing of their old clunkers responsibly. But the real baseline of that was I love talking to people. And so I got involved on the ground floor working with not-for-profit organization as well, similar to you, Julia. That ability to do all jobs for the organization, that experience that you get only for you work for a not-for-profit. You've got to create the budget, you've got to create the marketing strategy, you have to manage teams of people, you have to do everything. Really inspired me to that idea of working with people and teams and creating an organization to really focus on the operational side of getting stuff done. So all of us, all three of us really have this element of demand side action in our work: convincing, educating, creating awareness to business owners, homeowners, consumers, that they can have an impact on reducing climate emissions. And this isn't easy work. Putting yourself out there, getting rejected, feeling like you're fighting the good fight, but you're always fighting or trying to convince somebody to do the right thing. So Miranda, we'll start with you this time. Can you share with us a challenge that you've had to overcome and what keeps you resilient and coming back for more?
Sure. I think that the uncertainty of not knowing what I wanted to do was definitely a challenge, but also just staying true to what guided me, knowing that I wanted to make some sort of positive impact in the world after I leave it. That's all I knew. And so I think, yes, it was a bit of a limitation and struggle, not knowing, but also it was a strength in terms of being open to different things and trying things out. But also, I think being a youth, it has its strengths, but it definitely has its weaknesses if you are in council chambers. So sometimes we delegate on different issues. We speak with our councillors, our mayor, and being a young person, they might say, yeah, keep it up, good job, and walk away. And so instead of, seeing us as co-creators or co-designers in policy, which is something we advocate so much for at the CCC, and that definitely can be a struggle. So really trying to let others understand that, yes, we have the passion, but we also have expertise as youth. And we really need to collaborate, which is why I'm so happy to be a part of this panel, because we are showing the importance of the intergenerational collaboration in the climate movement.
Julia, I would love for you to build on this theme and share a juicy war story with us from your career and how you continue to remain optimistic.
Right. Well, remaining optimistic is actually something that you have to studiously be committed to, because otherwise you'd cry all the time working in our field. It doesn't mean being naive or, having rose-colored glasses, but you do have to have a sense of optimism. And I think part of being able to maintain that is knowing enough that there are solutions. And I find sometimes that, that the average person, the public, they're just scared and they don't actually know what we know, that in fact this is solvable. Right. And so, that creates a dynamic, which leads me to, my sort of challenge. Having, we talk about multi-generational. I've been involved in this actually more than 30 years. So, what's super challenging is doing the same thing over and over again and still showing up and doing it, right? Because as I say, I've worked on, acid rain and persistent organic pollutants and pesticides. And I was on the Canadian delegation to the Montreal Protocol in 1987 when that was signed, like big success, awesome. But here we are again, and so I think, some of the challenges are that we are really up against very big, entrenched, incumbent organizations, industry, government, etc. You know, even like when you think about the public, you know, like we have some inertia, like we've just used to doing things the way they've been done. And so, you know, just you feel like you're ahead of the headlights a lot of the time. And, you know, just in terms of, you know, what do we need, and putting out those solutions. And you know, I think that like, you know, I worked on getting rid of lead in gasoline. And, you know, I mean, it's bad for children's brains. And yet we still had, you know, like opposition to getting that out of gasoline. And so, you know, the biggest challenge is just like sticking with it, you know, when, and it's kind of like, you know, that what's the person who wrote about the stages of grief? You know, like, but basically we go through this all the time. It's like denial, you know, that this is the problem, that anything should be done about it, you know, whether, as I say, whether that's pesticides or lead in gasoline or greenhouse gas emissions. And then there's maybe, you know, spin, you know, a little bit of acceptance, but, you know, spin, you know, and minimizing, and then that, you know, then you know, the world's going to end and we're all going to move to Mexico, and, you know, just going through that. And then sometimes you thank gosh, you get to solutions, and then they take credit. Awesome, great. And then you have to say, great, you know, like, we pushed you to this so hard, and now fine, perfect, take credit for it. It's great. You know, so that's just like one of those, you know, it's not I'm not giving you the perfect juicy answer, but just like the repeat of this is just one of those things that you just have to, that's the job. That's what we all have to do.
No, that's the reality for sure. And it's, I have a bit of a variation on a theme with my frustration, but it's really similar. It's this sense of, why do I have to work so hard to convince a client or the government to take action or design a program that it just seems so obvious to me what the solution is? And then when they oftentimes, at least I observe, you know, when they do take action, why is it so complicated? Can we not just embrace this principle of Occam's razor? You know, the simplest solution is always the best. And oftentimes that goes for, in some cases, whether we like the answer or the solution or not, but the simplest solution is always the one that works. So,
yeah.
Anyways,
you know, and Ersilia, I think, you know, you started your point about, you know, how you love to engage with all the parties. And I think that we need in our movement and in our grand sort of plan for environmental protection, and is we do need everybody. And in particular, I mean, I would not count myself as one of the people who's like, I'm not the people person, you know, other people in my team manage the teams. You're so great at that. And just from you know, thinking about what are those skills, what are the experiences that we have. I love to be part of a team. Just don't ask me to organize it. Having people who do organize those teams, who bring the stakeholders together, who are, you know, really skilled facilitators, because we have to work with people who aren't necessarily exactly like us.
Sure.
Those are, you know, those are sort of some of the key learnings over the years, you know, just like, you can't go this alone. Like, there's no possible way. And so, you know, having those people on our side and in our teams is really special. And I think you've done a fantastic job on that.
I was going to say, you know, I credit a lot of that to this unwavering spirit of the community in general. There's a desire to help and accept help, and, you know, also know that somebody's walked the path before you. And I know, Julie, I was really fortunate to experience this early in my career, being introduced to a fabulous group of women that called themselves the Eco Babes. It was probably the first place I met you over at least 20 years ago, and really learned about this power of women mentoring women and continuing to learn so much and be inspired. And so, Julia, I'd love for you to share the origin story of the Eco Babes and just the role that mentoring and supporting women plays in your going forward.
Yeah, well, perhaps you kind of gathered that, there is some significant frustration that you have to work at being optimistic and recognizing that you can't go it alone. So yeah, it was, I think, where we first met. So a colleague and friend of mine, Louise Camo, who I worked with at Friends of the Earth, eons ago in Ottawa. She had been working with the Climate Trust Office. Then when BC put their carbon tax in, they created a fund, and she worked with that office to sort of set that up and how that would be mobilized. And apparently in Victoria, there was this thing called Eco Babes. So it was a bunch of women who worked in the sustainability space. And she was like, so she joined that. And then she came to Toronto and told me that there was this great initiative. Okay, well, let's just do it. How hard can it be? And so literally we just reached out to women that we knew who were working in sustainability. And like, this is government, nonprofits, corporate, the whole academics, and we would get together in people's homes. It was potluck. And so it started out pretty small, so we could be in our homes, and there was no particular like agenda, but sometimes somebody would say, can I do a presentation about, a report I'm just doing or a campaign I'm just launching? And so there was a tiny bit of structure, but mostly it was about supporting each other in terms of our eco journey and recognizing that it's challenging and we need to be doing this together. So now Ersilia has hosted this at her club. We've been down at the Mill Street Brewery for like a speed mentoring kind of thing. And Frances Edmonds at HP has kind of taken over the coordination because she's such an awesome networker. But it's big. And I think it really, the pink tea is really kind of an indication of, the interest that there is in sustainability and how we can work together on that.
For sure. And Miranda, I know that you have a story here as well, because I think you and Julia probably met in a similar way. And we'd love to hear from you, recently, where Julia and I are talking about 20 years ago, Eco Babe. So I'd love to hear from you, share your experience in mentoring and what role it can continue to play as you develop your career and grow.
Definitely. So throughout the Community Climate Council, mentoring is an ongoing process, not just myself mentoring others, but I find myself being a mentee continuously, just learning from my team as well. It's very reciprocal the entire time. And yeah, I honestly did not know how to start a nonprofit, had no idea what entailed being a CEO, did not realize it meant you are really not on the ground and you're doing a lot of, as you mentioned, people managing, finance, and a lot of the not so fun things, but the important things that need to get done. And so just learning as I went along couldn't have been done alone. It really was helpful that I had some mentors in my life or coaches from the YCI program, but also just the colleagues that we met, our community members just who are helping, who are also youth, and we're all just trying to learn together and trying to make this thing work. And I think once you have folks who believe in you, believe in your mission, and who are as passionate and dedicated to making it happen as you are, you not only become a mentor to them through the process, but you really do learn. But aside from that, I was also an educator at a conservation area. So as I mentioned, animals were really how I became a part of the environmental movement. And I was a conservationist. I was working at various parks, so at the TRCA or Halton or Credit Valley Conservation. And I was educating youth on a lot of different issues, whether it be species on the trails, different plants, and interconnections on climate. And so as an educator, you are continuously mentoring there as well. I've also tutored in the past. I don't know if any youth are listening who are tutors here too, but they can definitely resonate. Some of the students that I have had started with me in grade 2, and now they're off in high school. And so really being a mentor doesn't need to be mentorship in the traditional sense. It could be the communities that you impact in your daily lives, whether it's professional or otherwise. And yeah, I think it's an ongoing process that we never grow out of, isn't it? It's something that we truly just all as human beings are constantly doing.
I love that. I love that. Well, we are super fortunate today to have some questions come at us from some young women from Generation Z. So I would love to turn it over to the Famous Five to hear from Sarah, a mom of two and a student at the Duville Center.
Hi, my name is Sarah. I'm a student at the Uville Center. I have a 10-year-old and a baby. As a young mom, what can I be teaching my children to promote climate change? And what actions can we take as a family? Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. That's a brilliant question. And I'd love to take a first stab at this. I have a 13 and an almost 15-year-old. It's been a big part of my life, so it's fresh. And I mean, my first stab at this is that it's got to be simple. You have to find ways to promote care and responsibility for our environment that fit into your day-to-day rhythm of your life. And I found this really successful with my kids. And I know it seems super obvious, but things like not leaving the water running when they're brushing their teeth or turning the lights off when they leave the room. And while they sound obvious, they're really important to get kids in the habit early, because we all know how hard it is to break a habit once it's entrenched. So now, we've evolved from simple things like that to food issues, getting them involved in meal prep. We order from a local service called Mama Earth Organics that supports small scale and local organic farms. And so there are really easy ways that fit into the day-to-day aspects of our life that keep them aware, that they don't even know that they're aware, because you've been doing it for so long. And Julia, I'd love for you to add to that as well about actions families can take and encouraging kids to promote climate action.
Well, yeah, my baby's 28, so yeah, she's bossing me around now. So, I have to do what she says. So I think dividing this into a bit of sort of manageable chunks, absolutely. And you mentioned some of them, Ersilia, but if you have sort of categories, maybe you can tailor it to your family's needs. So waste, and waste as a concept is something that we can apply, and like zero waste or minimizing waste all across the board. So food waste, electricity and energy waste, garbage as waste, so all of that, just conceptually, and instilling that concept about not wasting is really, an entry point. And you can then apply it to, this and that, depending where the kids are at, and modeling it yourself. And the other sort of concept which maybe, can resonate is one about quality versus quantity. And, we tend to be so, like we've kind of grown up in a very sort of consumeristic, and there's fashion changes and that kind of thing. And so sort of having that approach about, something that, I guess it resonates a bit with the waste piece as well, but, just having that sense of, the appliances that we buy, or the curtains, or the light bulbs, or the whatever that we're going to do the full accounting about what's going to last, and what's that then doesn't end up as waste, or that gives us value and that gives us pride, and so instilling those concepts and applying it in a way that's relevant to your own life and your kids' life.
Yeah. And Miranda, additional thoughts? You do so much work tutoring and mentoring and working with youth. Be interested in any additional thoughts you have to Sarah's question also.
Definitely a bit of a biased answer as an environmental educator in the past, but get your kids outside, get them outside on the trails, hike, and connect with nature. There's just so much that nature can teach us about empathy and the interconnections that, a simple ant has, let's say, to the relationship of pollination on a plant species. There's just so much that we can teach kids about it. And when they understand the interconnections in nature, it's so much easier to apply to us as a society, that it really does apply in our communities, those interrelationships globally. And so what happens if there are emissions in one country, it really does impact us all here. So really understanding that and making empathy-based decisions is so much of what the future generation in the world needs. So I would highly encourage that, as well as if you have any budding activists or advocates in your home, encourage them, support them, don't let them stop. And if you can create, climate strike posters with them, find out if there's a strike happening in September in your hometown, or if there isn't, you can organize one very easily and get them involved in advocacy and activism at a very young age. I think it's very nice for them to actually get outside and see the community that they're a part of, and the strength and power that we all collectively have in asking those critical questions of, our energy structure, why is it happening in the first place? And don't be afraid to give them the real answers, because we do need real solutions.
I think that's
No, I definitely echo that, both the youth activism, because, kids are like right now, and this is why, I love this panel, like, that's where the energy and the drive and the even the political motivation right now is coming from. It's coming from the fact that we have it's being called like eco-anxiety, but the psychiatrists and psychologists of North America have documented this as a reality, as a condition. And so we need to fight eco-anxiety with eco-action. That is the actual medicine for this. And so we have to validate what our kids are feeling and going through, and give them a way to actually deal with, help deal with that. And it'll be a benefit for all of us. Yeah. And there's an incredible book called Nature Deficit Disorder. And just in terms of emphasizing your point, Miranda, this is not only something great to do, it actually has demonstrated value in terms of how kids learn and their mathematics scores. So it's not just a nice to have.
No, it's a powerful tool and a really powerful message. We're going to go to our second question from Sophia, who's a Master of Science student at Carleton University.
Hello, my name's Sophia, a Famous 5 Ottawa committee member and Masters of Science student. Climate action requires collective involvement, including that of governments and companies. Where is the line between encouraging individual action and advocacy while holding other entities responsible? Thank you.
Thank you, Sophia. Julia, do you want to take a first stab at Sophia's question?
Well, I guess the first point is it's not one or the other. There in a way there's no line. Like we have to be firing on all cylinders. We have to. No, that's not a good analogy anymore. Internal combustion engines are out. So interestingly, I mean, as I said at the beginning, I'm a self-professed policy wonk. And so my inclination is always, this is what I've mostly done, is that policy reform, policy advocacy, focus, because I see it as a mechanism to drive change, float all boats. You've got the innovators, they're sort of moving things along, but in the end, we need to pick up the pace and scale in terms of reducing emissions to protect the climate. And so we need the policy to drive that and to sort of put the rules of the game in place. But that's not going to happen without the body politic, the population wanting it, because politicians tend to get in front of parades, not create them. So we really do need the commitment, the call for action, the demonstration that we're willing to take action in order to get the policy action. But we need the policy action in order to move the agenda along. if you live, in place A, you need to go to place B for work, and there's no transit between that. Like, how are you supposed to get to work except in a car? So, we need the virtuous circle between the personal engagement and the policy drivers in order to actually make progress on climate action.
Yeah, I mean, I wholeheartedly agree with you. Obviously, as I've mentioned, spent most of my career dedicated to individual action, but it is equally necessary to push the policy agenda. They can't happen without each other. So I completely agree with you. Miranda, would you like to throw your hat into the ring into that question? Do you disagree that it's both pieces?
I definitely think it's both, but I guess more recently I've sort of shifted to, and maybe it is frustration working in it for so long that I'm like, why is the government not doing more? And so I think it's important to really have that narrative at the back of your mind, especially if you are working so hard, if you're reusing your entire life, if you've been adopting sustainable practices, whether they're embedded in your culture or if you've learned them, well, whatever it is, there could be a sense of guilt often of I'm not doing enough. How can I do more? Where can I help more? And I find anytime I feel that sort of guilt, I remind myself there's a larger system at play here. There's a reason why this is happening. And there's so many more interconnections than just your one action. So I think understanding the larger picture does help with the feeling of guilt. However, it is still important to create those individual actions for sure. I do remember, I think it was as early as grade 3, maybe, we had an assignment of calculating our carbon footprint. And so this concept was ingrained in our minds of what can we do better as a family? How can we change what we're eating, our transportation? And especially as in a community here in Peel, where it's filled with a lot of newcomers and immigrants, it's a lot of pressure to put on people sometimes to change the way that they're living. And then as I grew up, I realized that that was created by BP to put pressure on individuals to sort of shift the blame on individuals instead of looking at British Oil or other oil and gas companies. And so it's extremely devastating when you think about who ingrained this concept and who developed this narrative and why are we thinking this way. So it's really important to think critically about that as well.
I love that. No, it is absolutely necessary to be driving both agendas to really affect change. But I do want to give us a chance. The time is flying today, and I want us to talk about what we're working on now and what's getting us really excited these days. So, Julia, can you share a project or a campaign that has you super motivated?
Well, let me see. Let me highlight our work on retrofit. So the Atmospheric Fund is really focused on urban emission reduction. And in urban areas, the emissions pie, when you sort of divide up where emissions come from, half of it comes from buildings. The existing buildings we have, and we need to make sure that the new buildings that we build are really as close to zero emission as possible. But what do we do about these, like, just this important infrastructure where we live and we work and we play? And so we've done retrofits for 30 years, but we have really ramped it up over the past 10, and then a new phase of work in the current year, because we've done a lot of what I would call demonstrating and de-risking how multi-measure retrofits can actually reduce emissions significantly, like upwards of 30%. Now we have to go blow past 40% reductions, and that's what we're working on now. But also the multiple benefits that this brings. So it's not just the sort of technical, okay, it's reduced this much energy and emissions. That's awesome, but it's putting people to work. And these are jobs that are right here in our cities, and that are across a range of trades, engineering, the monitoring, the goods and services that actually go into that retrofit. And so, and in particular now, the new phase of work is bringing in a much more explicit focus on equity and community benefits, and we've started about 5 years ago with a company called Building Up to bring people who have challenges getting into the workforce, hard to employ, marginalized communities, including people from the social housing buildings where we've been operating, and training those folks. And it's kind of a pathway, a stepping stone into the construction trade. So that's really interesting. Look how we can improve the health of these buildings and the people who are living in buildings, like really demonstrable health benefits. So it's about the multi-solving. And so I guess that's what I'm, retrofits is the work that we do. The thing that's super exciting is when we said, okay, we're going to take a multi-benefit, multi-dimensional approach to this, not just the narrow, nerdy kind of, climate, energy aspect, and the possibilities that opens up and the value proposition that generates. So, that's kind of how we're just like re-energizing ourselves about the work that we've done for so long, but that is actually not even worth doing if you don't do multi-benefit. We have in our society so many objectives, like we can't just meet them one by one by one. We have to sort of bring them together.
I think you touched on such an important message, Julia, and that is, it is one issue, but you're able to tackle so many benefits and ancillary pieces of it at the same time. I'm super excited. A project that I'm super excited about is a direct to customer journey Summerhill's launching to support homeowners to access incentives and rebates to make their homes more energy efficient. So really similar, building on this, retrofit economy and the swirling and the focus on the impact our homes can have. It's my continued theme today. How do we make things as simple as possible? And so we're launching Summerhill Connect to try to apply that principle about, how do you make more simple this challenging task of navigating endless application forms and eligibility requirements, and just make it easy. So that's something we're really focused on. And before we turn it back to Francis in a second, Miranda, do you want to share quickly with us a project or something that's really getting you jazzed up or that you're working on?
Sure. At the Community Climate Council, we're working on a climate hub, and it's going to be a database online that compiles all of the policy and research that pertains specifically to climate in Peel region. So we find any average resident, myself included, if we wanted to learn about anything or policy related in our area, we'd have to look at the region of Peel, City of Brampton, maybe Credit Valley Conservation, just so many different websites. And so we really want to just extract all of that, put it in one place, and make it accessible for folks, and also have it translated in languages that are predominantly spoken here in Peel. So we're really looking forward to that and seeing who can collaborate on it as it unfolds. Yeah.
Great. Well, Francis, I think you're hearing a common theme here. We're trying to simplify, make things accessible, and we're trying to tackle, multiple benefits with one program. So I'll turn it over to you. We could keep going for the next hour.
Yeah. And I wish you could. I'm learning so much, as I'm sure everybody else is, and I'm also filled with tremendous gratitude. But time being what it is, we have to unfortunately curtail this part of our program. But I would remind everybody that shortly you will be receiving in your inbox an email which will invite you to the Après Pink Tea. And that's a chance for you to ask your questions, such as what role can digital platforms play to get Canadians past inertia and fear? What are the other things we can do? But you've given us so many good ideas. But now I need to ask you the famous 5 Foundation lightning round of questions, because these help other people to overcome difficulties. So I'm going to make a statement and then ask you to respond in maybe 2-3 words, not sentences, but words, please. So the first one is, when I'm confused, I ... So let me start with Julia. Julia, when you're confused, ...
I consult a colleague.
Nice. Miranda, when you're confused, you...
Make a list.
Yes, I often do that too. And Ersilia, when I'm confused, I,
Ask a lot of questions.
good for you. When I'm sad, I, ... Julia?
Go outside.
Miranda, when I'm sad, I,
Spend time with family.
and Ersilia, when I'm sad, I,
As any good extrovert, I talk to somebody.
and you're a wonderful communicator, Ersilia, really superb, as are your buddies too. And the last one is when I'm scared, I, ... Julia?
Let's see. That's when I make the list. Go back to purpose.
Thank you. Miranda, when I'm scared, I,
Go for it. Depending on what it is, of course, but just sometimes you have to go for it.
interesting. Yeah, that's a good answer. That's one we haven't had so far, so thank you. And Ersilia, when you're scared, you,
I freeze. I'm so impressed with Miranda going for it. My first reaction is to just completely freeze up when I'm scared.
so haven't you two given two of the three usual responses? Fear, what's it? Fright, freeze, and I forget.
Fight or flight.
Flight, freeze. That's it. Thank you, Ersilia. Well, it's now our pleasure to say thank you to these outstanding leaders. I'm sure, as I've said, like me, you've learned a lot today and want to hear more. So we're at a tea party, a pink tea, because that's the way women organize to discuss things about how to make life better for themselves, their families, and others in the community. So I don't know whether you have a teacup or not, but I would now like to pose, or a mug or a glass of water. I would now like to ask everybody to think about what we've learned today, what we have gained today, and how we're going to answer the call to action. We are very grateful for what we have heard that you have done in the past and you will be doing in the future. Thank you very much. And so while we normally thank our guests individually, we're going to do it because of time as a group, but it is no less a sincere appreciation for your service to Canada. So if we may raise a cup, a mug, a glass in toast to Julia, Ersilia, and to Miranda. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's such a nice little tradition.
Thank you. And a special thanks, of course, to Ersilia for overseeing all the questions and the interview for us today. And I'm sitting here thinking, wow, what a future Canada has. We're in good hands. If there are more Sophias, Madisons, and Sarahs in the crowd. So in a way of encouraging them to participate, let's say thank you to them too, with a toast to Madison, to Sophia, and to Sarah. Thank you for your leadership.
Thanks for your questions.
And I'm now going to ask our talented Encore group to allow our wonderful panelists to relax for a moment while I bring you some famous 5 news. And the first thing is, we hope you will continue to feel equal to high and splendid braveries, the famous 5 pledge. Secondly, the federal government, through their Women and Gender Equality, WAGE, if you just take the initials, has announced a new program to help Indigenous and LGBTQIA plus two-spirited people overcome gender-based violence. So if you go to the WAGE site, WAGE Canada, WAGE, Women and Gender Equality Canada, you will see the applications for groups to apply for funding and that the deadline closes on March the 10th. One of the projects that the Famous 5 Foundation supports, and we hope you will too, is the reactivation of the Governor General's Award in commemoration of the person's case. This was established in 1979 by Prime Minister Joe Clark And it honors 5 women or 6 women every year, including a young woman who have significantly advanced the conditions for women in Canada. So we would ask you to contact your MP or the minister responsible for wage, Marcy Ian, or her parliamentary secretary from Canada, Carleton, Jenna Suds, to reintroduce, to reactivate this, so that on October 18th of this year, we're going to be celebrating some really outstanding women. And certainly there are lots of women to nominate, and I would, if you have some ideas, nominate them. If you need some ideas, please read Myrna Forster's book, 100 Canadian Heroes and 100 More Canadian Heroines. So now, coming up, thank you everyone who has brought us Seasons Past. We really appreciate it. And if you haven't done it, please do so. On March the 4th, we have the great honor of meeting with the Governor General of Canada, with Mary Simon. And if you'd like to do a little prep work and learn about Mary, because she has not written her own book yet, you can read her husband's book, True North Rising by Whit Fraser. So that's on March the 4th. Then coming up in April, we're going to continue the discussion about the environment, and it will be balanced out later in the year with some industry or business perspectives. But on April the 1st, we're talking to Dr. Suzanne Simard, who wrote the book, Finding the Mother Tree. It was out of print before Christmas, which is wonderful news, but it's now back in print. And I just saw it has been translated into several languages. So definitely another book and another leader that we will be celebrating, and that will happen on April the 1st. And a quick question as to who you would like to meet July, August, September. We already have May booked with the Honorable Kathleen Wynne and tech entrepreneur Bobby Rochette, who will talk about the leadership by lesbians in Canada. And in June, it will be Martha Hall Finley, the Chief Sustainable Officer from Suncor. So now our last toast, and that's to each and every one of us, because we all are leaders. And so I would like you to say in a strong, clear voice, to me, I'm a leader too, as you raise your cup. Are you ready? Or your mug? So, to me, I'm a leader too. Well, again, thank you to our fabulous panel. Thank you to the wonderful Famous Five Foundation Ottawa chapter for curating this event. And I hope you will stay on and chat in the chat room, or indeed search your inbox for the link to the Après Pink Tea and continue this discussion. Merci, miigwech. Thank you very, very much. Bye-bye.
Hey, hey, hey there, woman. Hey, hey, hey there, girl. The time has come, there's work to be done. Come on, you women of the world. Hey, hey, hey there, sister. Hey, hey, hey there, friend. Come and walk by my side. Sing out with pride. Come on, you women of the world. They say that change is a coming. They say that change is good. You've got to change